Last year, during our first forum, which was devoted to the great victory and the liberation of Azerbaijani lands, you, Mr. President, have kindly supported proposal of Professor Ahmed Uysal to make it annual event and invite international experts and think tank representatives to discuss regional peace, security, and development. You instructed us to do it, and we are glad that this year we are able to fulfill this task under the new brand name, Shusha International Forum. Yesterday, our foreign participants have traveled to jewel of Azerbaijani culture, city of Shusha. On the way, they were able to get to know some important reconstruction and development projects in the liberated Karabakh, including airport in Fuzuli and new road Zafer Yolu. This is the road along which our brave soldiers went and liberated city of Shusha. Our guests on their way were also able to see some part of barbarian destructions which have been left after Armenian occupation. Now, this is an important goal of our nation and well-articulated personal mission of the President Ilham Əliyev to turn Karabakh into the most prosperous and peaceful region of the world. I believe our participants came back from Shusha full of joy and impressions. History of Karabakh, consequences of liberation war, regional integration, security, and challenges to the development issues, these are some topics which are under forum's discussion. We hope that messages and points coming from panel discussions will spread all over the world through articles, social media networks. During the Shusha session, a number of speakers made some suggestions and recommendations, which I guess participants might raise up today to get your, Mr. President, reaction. On behalf of all participants, I would like to extend our sincere gratitude to you, Mr. President, for your strong support to this forum and for your visionary leadership in building sustainable peace in the region. Mr. President, taking this opportunity, I want also to thank you for support you always extend to ADA University. Now, giving floor to your Excellency, we look forward and delighted to hear your introductory remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, the guests. First of all, I'd like to... Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, dear guests. First of all, I'd like to express gratitude to other university for hosting this event. It's already a tradition. We met last April here and discussed a broad range of issues related to post-conflict situation. And of course, having these traditional meetings is very important for us, I think for international community, to understand better our plans, our intentions, and to look what has been done. I'm glad that other university took this very important initiative. And as you know, this is one of the leading universities in Azerbaijan with already a very high level of education, very good international contacts, and also university which is growing. And relatively recently, a new international partnership format on education was established, and soon I'm sure the Italian Azerbaijani University here under the other umbrella will open its doors for students. I'd like to express gratitude to all the participants, to our guests for visiting us and for traveling to Shusha. I'm sure it was an interesting journey to see the beauties of Karabakh and at the same time the devastations en route to Shusha and in Shusha also. Well, what you've seen is, I think, the best illustration of what we had to experience during the 30 years of occupation. And these mass destructions and devastations was not a result of the First Karabakh War. That was a result of barbarism and vandalism committed by Armenia throughout the 30 years of occupation. So all our villages, most of our cities have been destroyed, knocked to the ground. In some regions, like Kelbecer, Lachin, and partly Zengilan, and Shusha, there have been illegal settlement programs officially sponsored by Armenian government, which is a brutal violation of international conventions. You've been informed about our plans to rebuild Karabakh and Eastern Zengezur. The plans really are large scale and we're implementing with our own resources, allocating the financial resources of our budget and with the support of international companies. But apart from that, the last year since we met and discussed last April, one of the important tasks in front of us was to strengthen the new realities and to work with international organizations, leading international organizations, to present our case, to present our vision for the region. And also it was very important that the international community, the leading international organizations, accept the new realities on the ground. And it happened. And also in the meantime, we've been actively advocating for new era in the Caucasus, era of peace and cooperation. And finally, we got a positive response from Armenia just recently, and the government accepted 5 basic principles which Azerbaijan put forward, the principles which should be a foundation for peace agreement with Armenia. At the same time, also, based on Azerbaijani proposal, Armenia agreed finally to establish joint working groups with Azerbaijan to start process of delimitation of our border. I think these are important signs of recent development, and also it shows that now, after a year and a half have passed since the Second Karabakh War, Armenian leadership, and I hope population, understands necessity of peace. And if peace agreement is signed and those basic principles are known, then the peace in the Caucasus will be long-lasting and sustainable. This is what we want, and I think that what we demonstrate and what we announce is a clear example of our will to contribute to peace in the Caucasus. We are rebuilding Karabakh. We are mobilizing our resources to strengthen our economy, because without that it will be not very easy to allocate substantial funds. At the same time, we advocate for peace agenda in the Caucasus. And I think on all the tracks, initiative is in our hands. And this initiative serves and should serve the cause of peace. So probably I will conclude my introductory remarks here and maybe leave more time for our discussions. Once again, thank you for being with us. And I'm sure that this traditional format of gathering will continue maybe as one of the ideas I heard from Hafiz Pashayev that there'll be some proposals from the participants. I just want also maybe to add to that, saying that maybe there could be also some types of interaction in between the Shusha International Fora, which will take place regularly. Maybe we can think about some other forms of, how to say, meetings and conferences in between. Maybe in other cities, maybe in Agdam, in Zengilan, in other cities which have been liberated. So to make, I think, our interaction more efficient. Because for us, importance is that international community knows what have happened, knows the full truth about the years of occupation, and knows about our plans and intentions to build peace. For that reason, I think there should be a permanent line of contact between our participants and those members of expert society who didn't manage to be with us today. So that's my proposal for maybe next round of working program, but of course all the proposals which will be presented by you will be very carefully addressed. So once again, thank you and wish you a pleasant stay in Azerbaijan.
If you allow me, I have to add to what I have said already about visit to Shusha. There is already one proposal to make next one in Lachin.
Agreed. In Lachin, you know, we are now in the phase of construction of international airport. And in Zengilan, the airport will open this year. Lachin, probably 2024, but we'll find a way to get there easy and in a comfortable way.
Thank you, Mr. President. And with your permission, we can start our question and answer session. Quite substantial number of our participants have subscribed for the questions. And I would like to start our first question, with your permission, with Mr. Svant Karnol. I will ask just our participants, please present the country that you are representing and institution that you come from. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. President, for this invitation and this conference. It's an honor to be here, and it was particularly an honor to see the liberated Shusha for the first time. I'm Svante Cornell with the Central Asia Caucasus Institute in Washington and the Institute for Security and Development Policy in Sweden. My question follows up on your point about an era of peace. We understand, especially I think, after seeing Shusha, you know, studying something for 25, 30 years is one thing, seeing it with your own eyes is very different. And we understand the difficulty of looking forward in view of the devastation that was imposed on these lands. But for an era of peace, my question to you regards whether you believe in the need for developing institutions to support on a regional level a new era for the Caucasus. My perspective is that the liberation of Karabakh could be a changing point for the whole region, providing a historic opportunity to reverse the processes of division and conflict that really started with the separatism that led to the occupation of Karabakh in the late 1980s, and replace this with a different process, a different era, but not only in Karabakh, but in the broader Caucasus. Process of cooperation and development that is truly regional. For this to develop, it seems to me institutions would be needed, and Azerbaijan is the only country that has the credibility and the resources to lead a process of creation of such institutions. Do you see the possibility of yourself taking the lead in creating regional institutions for the South Caucasus, particularly financial ones, such as regional development funds and the like? Thank you.
Yeah, it's a very interesting issue which you touched upon, and we need to consult with the expert society and also in the government what kind of regional financial package we can put forward. But of course it's obvious that for the time being our main concentration is how to rebuild Karabakh and how to return the former refugees as soon as possible. At the same time, our peace agenda and initiatives which have been publicly articulated and were supported by international communities aimed at regional development, new opportunities for regional development in the Southern Caucasus. Not only between Azerbaijan and Armenia. Of course, this is one of the most important elements of regional cooperation, but in the Southern Caucasus in general. We lost this opportunity for 30 years because of separatism, because of Armenian aggression, and Southern Caucasus was not integrated. Yes, there is a very close cooperation between Azerbaijan and Georgia, which on bilateral level and on the international level already presents its importance. But at the same time, I think that there should be also understanding in Armenia that they cannot continue to live like an isolated island in this region. They need to normalize relations with us. They need to put down territorial claims to Azerbaijan and to Turkey, and to not to be hesitant in any kind of interaction on trilateral level in the Southern Caucasus. Why I'm saying that? Because there have been already several times proposals from Azerbaijan, supported by leading international organizations, to organize a trilateral meetings on different levels. We suggested on the levels of foreign ministers. Armenia refused. Then there was a suggestion to have this meeting on the level of experts. Again, Armenia refused. Then we suggested to have this meeting on the level of representatives of civil society, and again, Armenia refused. And this is known by our partners, and we do not understand why, because we think it is counterproductive. If we look to the future of Southern Caucasus as integrated area of security, cooperation, and shared prosperity, then this, policy of Armenia is beyond any logic. But probably they need some time, probably they need to evaluate risks which they think may occur from that. But I think it's inevitable. And we are ready, and our Georgian colleagues are ready. So I think that could be a first step. And with respect to financial package for the region, you know how Azerbaijan and Georgia are integrated, taking into account the energy and transportation routes. You are a good expert on that. And I think there are also opportunity to invite Armenia to be part of regional development, and they will benefit from that. They will benefit from getting access to our energy resources. They can be, to a certain degree, a part of the international transportation corridors. So that in itself will generate additional wealth. And also normalizing relations with Azerbaijan will open such opportunities for Armenia that probably today it is difficult even to predict. So this is our plans. Building institutions, I think, should be in different directions. First, we need to start, I think, from kind of a political dimension, because this is the most important. To what degree Armenia is willing to go forward? Because during the times of occupation, during my numerous contacts with Armenian leaders, always we saw that when we come to a very decisive moment to have a breakthrough, they always made a step back. There was very little trust. And still, I can say that there is not much trust with their behavior, if I may say so, because sometimes they make very contradictory statements. So political dimension, I think, important contribution will be also a kind of engagement of their representatives in our discussions. We, for instance, will support that. We also think about some contacts, people-to-people contacts on the level of NGOs. And as I said before, we can have some regional dimension. And also to look at regional development broader, because you know that European Union already announced a very big financial package for Armenia, 2.6 billion euros, and also later for Azerbaijan. So part of that resources can go to build connectivity and to create better opportunities for people. Taking into account the very small population of Armenia, I think that will be more than enough if it is used for the cause of peace, but not again try to take revenge or to possess a threat to its neighbors.
Mr. Sajjad Karim.
Mr. President, Sajjad Karim, former member of the European Parliament and chair of the South Caucasus delegation. Thank you very much. It's good to be back in Baku. Since we last met, the situation has changed considerably, and I certainly find it possible to congratulate you personally and the people of Azerbaijan for this very significant achievement to put right a very significant wrong that had existed for far too long. One of the things that stays with me, Mr. President, of all of the meetings you had with my delegation is that you never limited your vision for development to Azerbaijan. You always spoke about peace and development for the entire South Caucasus. With the current progress being made both in negotiations for a peace agreement between Azerbaijan and Armenia, with EU facilitation, and Turkey-Armenia relations, is it now reaching the time for Azerbaijan with its friends and allies to help create political space for Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan so that within Armenia and with the Armenian diaspora in Europe and USA, he can really push for his people's backing for peace? Thank you.
Thank you. We hope that that will be the case. And of course, every government has its own agenda. And we heard that Armenian government also announced a peace agenda. This is very positive statements. But at the same time, we need to see actions. And now I think we see these actions. We see statements coming from Armenian government which are aimed at peace, which are based on the new realities in the region, and which are based on international law. That's what we always were advocating for. The realities have changed, and this has been acknowledged by even the mediators. And even before Russian-Ukrainian war, there was a kind of frustration among the co-chairs of the Minsk group what they should do, because Azerbaijan itself implemented the Madrid principles. And when I met the representatives of the Minsk group just after the end of the war, I told them to give proposal what they're going to do, what will be their agenda. And I know that it was difficult for them to, to put forward some, how to say, practical proposals. But after the Russian-Ukrainian war, it was already announced that Minsk Group co-chairmanship is no longer functional. It is dysfunctional. And in this respect, it shows that the new realities, they, of course, have its impact. So it's important that Armenian government and Armenian political spectrum fully realizes the new realities and totally refrains from any kind of attempts to take revenge. First, it will be counterproductive. The result of that, if that happens, will be even more painful for Armenia. And second, it will be contradictory to the demand of the region and demand of international community to finally achieve long-lasting peace. From our side, we do everything in order to support the positive trends. And if you look at the history of long-lasting wars, occupations, and devastations, we will see that in our case, the move from finalizing the hostile stage towards peace was very rapid. And that was again based on our proposal, because it was us and me personally who was telling for more than 1 year that we need to have peace agreement with Armenia, and just finally they agreed. Just finally, it was just weeks before. Before that, there was silence. And there were statements again about contesting, statements related to contesting of our territorial integrity. And at the same time, it was us who said, let's start work on the border delimitation. Again, it was silence on Armenian side for more than 1 year. Finally, they agreed. And soon, I would say very soon, the joint working groups will meet. Why should they lose 1 year? It's not understandable. Therefore, all our efforts will be aimed at strengthening the positive trends. But we cannot do it unilaterally. We need to see in Armenian government a partner which we can trust and which we can agree on long-term peace. So I think that it is possible, but of course it will depend on the internal political development in Armenia, because it's understandable that all the ideological, basement have been seriously damaged, because all the ideology was based on aggression, on attempts to legitimize occupation. Everything what they've done, starting from erasing of Azerbaijani cultural heritage, ending with changing the names of our cities, including Agdam and Shusha and others, all was aimed at turning de facto occupation into de jure legitimization of secession. So now this ideological basis no longer exists, and we understand it is not easy for them to find a new goal. In our case, our goal was very clear, to strengthen independence, and we always, during the times of occupation, were thinking not only how to return Karabakh, but we were thinking at the same time how to strengthen independence, make it irreversible, and not to be dependent on anyone, on whether it's political, economic, financial, energy, whatever. And we achieved that. We achieved both. Full independence, ability to conduct independent policy, and we achieved the return of Karabakh. Armenia lost its chance to be a really independent country. Don't want to go in much details, everybody knows. The real, political configurations there. And they lost lands which did not belong to them. So they need to understand it and find for themselves a new goal. And I think that will be peace and benefits of cooperation and putting down territorial claims to Azerbaijan and to Turkey. And you know, it is absolutely irrational to put territorial claims to Turkey, which is one of the leading economy and one of the very few leading armies in the world. We support Turkish-Armenian process, and I think it's a chance for Armenian government and politicians to think thoroughly about their future, how they want to see themselves in the region. I think that they don't have a clear understanding, and put down all the illusions, put down all attempts to rebuild the army, become stronger, to have 5 million population, which they announced as their state program, and then to take back the territories. That will be the end of their statehood, official end. And we're ready to support positive tendencies, and we are doing that. So we have hopes but we need to test Armenians because we never had negotiations with them on peace. So now it's time when we start. As I said, on the border, it will start very, very soon. On talks on peace agreement, we are ready and we're waiting for the date from Armenian government, and we will start.
Our next question to Dr. Hasan Unal.
Thank you very much. Mr. President, Your Excellency, you were with us last year and I was here, and I congratulated you in particular on your great victory, a victory of an unprecedented scale last year, which basically changed the whole political landscape here. The Azerbaijani armed forces under your great leadership did a very, very good job indeed. And you not only put a sharp end to the irredentist dreams of Armenia, but also you managed presumably to wake them up to the reality that they can't basically get what they want with impunity. This year, I would like to congratulate you particularly on two things. Your concerted efforts for reconstruction in the liberated territories, a large part of which we saw yesterday, both in Fuzuli as well as in Shusha, and also for your relentless efforts for a diplomatic solution to the conflict, region-wise, both between Azerbaijan and Armenia, of course, but also between Turkey and Armenia. Here, what I would like to ask you is about Russia, because I think it's quite timely, as in the West there is so much Russia bashing. You seem to be dealing with Russia quite professionally and from a quite professional point of view. And last year, you concluded a defense pact with Turkey. You called it quite nicely a Turkish-Azerbaijani NATO pact, about which we were quite happy in Turkey. And this year, you seem to have signed an agreement, a declaration with Moscow, by which you have agreed on a number of schemes on cooperation, including defense matters and the political solution to the conflict in Southern Caucasus and all that. It seems as if there is a triangle now which seems to be working in good order between Ankara, Baku, and Moscow. Now, would you comment on that first, at a time when there is so much Russia bashing across the Western world? And would you also please comment on how your handling of Russia impacts on Armenia's behavior, if any? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your kind words about what we are doing on the liberated territories. And thank you for being with us last year and this year. And with respect to the question you asked, I think it's also what you said demonstrates what I've said before, the independent character of Azerbaijan's foreign policy, which is based on our national interests and which is based on a maximum level of achievements. And in our region, we need to think about security and cooperation as an integral part of our today and our future, because without security there will be no cooperation, there will be no economic benefits. And economic performance of Azerbaijan, which is also based on our own resources, also was generated by stability, long-lasting stability, which is part of security. Therefore, these important events which you mentioned, Shusha Declaration, signed last June with President Erdogan in Shusha. Of course, it reflects the character of our cooperation, brotherly cooperation with Turkey. And today we are just officialized the substance of this cooperation. We've been allies anyway, in all the forms, including in area of military cooperation and defense industry. So now, by signing Shusha Declaration in this historical city, we demonstrated to the whole world that we are together by word and by signature. Signing a declaration on strategic interaction with Russia also was based on our strategic interests, because it's our neighbor. It's a country which actively participated to put an end to Second Karabakh War, and which peacekeepers are in Azerbaijan, in Karabakh. And plus, there's a big range of issues which we worked on with Russia for many, many years: economic, energy, transportation, cultural, humanitarian side. And of course, we were purchasing a lot of military equipment from Russia. Yes, true, we were purchasing it at a market price, unlike Armenia, which got it free of charge. It was covered by so-called loans, but these loans have never been returned. So that's the difference. But at the same time, I think it was also a kind of a message to the regional players that there should be peace. And Turkey and Russia, both of them, participated in the new configuration of the region after the war. You know that Turkish-Russian Monitoring Center to observe the situation is based in Agdam. So this is, I think, for the first time in the history that this kind of arrangement is possible. And also Turkish-Russian relationship, and now we see the efforts of President Erdogan to facilitate and to ceasefire in Ukraine. So all that is serving the regional security and stability, and at the same time demonstrates, as I said once again, independent character of our cooperation. We do what is in the interest of Azerbaijani people, which the people who want peace after so many years of occupation. And of course, economic and political dialogue should continue, and we are in favor of that. And also you mentioned about kind of triangle between Turkey, Russia, and Azerbaijan. It didn't happen yet. We didn't have any formal engagement at any level, but at the same time there are a lot of issues which are interrelated, particularly transportation and energy. And we have active dialogue with both of these countries on separate tracks. They have it on their own track, but it has never been a kind of a trilateral format. And today I think it's a little bit premature to talk about that. And basically we are satisfied with the regional configuration. We have good relations with all our neighbors, not only Turkey and Russia, but also with Georgia and Iran. We hope to have good relations with Armenia, and thus we will be surrounded by the area of stability. That's what we want, in order to concentrate on peace agenda, on economy, in order not to spend billions of dollars every year for purchasing arms, but to divert it into economy and reconstruction. Well, it's difficult to say, but we all know that there have been a lot of expectations in Armenia that Russia will interfere into war in Karabakh. It didn't happen because we fought on our territory. And Armenia was trying to manipulate with this Common Defense Treaty Organization's obligation, but Common Defense Treaty Organization has a mandate to support member states on their territory, and we were fighting on our territory, so that didn't happen. But at the same time, we all know, we publicly said many times that during the 44 days war, regularly, there have been several a day cargo planes carrying weapons from Russia to Armenia. We traced all the routes from Rostov, from Mozdok. We asked our Georgian friends to block the airspace, and they did. Also, we asked our Georgian friends to block the land route from Russia to Georgia to transport weapons to Armenia, and they did it also, and we are grateful. We sent letters to all Caspian littoral states not to allow Russian cargo planes carrying weapons to Armenia. We sent it to Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, and Iran, but unfortunately, these planes were using the territory of these countries, entering Armenia. So that was how it was, and we should not hide this part of 44 days war. But Armenian expectations were much bigger. They thought that Russian army should come and fight and to defend separatism, and it didn't happen. There was a kind of frustration there, but because of the years of occupation, because we know how Armenia government and diaspora works. They think that the whole world owes them everything. And someone will come and defend them, someone will come and fight for them, someone will come and give them money, give them everything, and they will sit and just exploit their questionable and, very doubtful so-called tragedy. Every country and every nation had a tragic moments in its history, but their problem is that they made their main ideology these very doubtful and fake historical facts rather than to look to the future. So now, taking into account that Prime Minister Pashinyan paid an official visit to Russia on 19th of April, just almost 2 months after the war between Russia and Ukraine, and it was an official visit. So it demonstrates that relations between these two countries are excellent. And we always want relations between countries who surround us to be good. That's part of our peace agenda.
Next question to Dr. Brenda Schaffer.
Hello, Mr. President. Thank you for hosting us, and especially in the beautiful Shusha. I'm currently a professor at the U.S. Naval Postgraduate School and very happy to be here in Azerbaijan. So you talked about exceptional behavior of Armenia and of the conflict. So if there's one issue that there seems to be almost uncontested agreement in the international system is the use of mines. You can hardly find any country that, sometimes with terror, we see different interpretations. One man says it's liberation, another man says it's terror, right? We rarely find anyone who says that use of mines is something that in any way is legitimate. And in this conflict, the use has been exceptional, not just in the military zones, but I think something like the asking for 10 days reprise for humanitarian reasons before leaving Kelbajar, and then using that to throw thousands of additional mines, placing mines on the bodies of the shaheeds of Azerbaijani soldiers so that medical doctors and nurses were injured and killed when they were preparing these shaheeds for burial with their families. Unprecedented in our modern era. But should the international community enable this behavior? I can even think about US Congress almost every year gave earmarked funds for Karabakh for demining, which it seems it was using it for mining. As you said, the EU throws $3 billion with no strings attached of saying, oh, maybe you should use this for demining. Shouldn't the international community be obligated to enable this behavior? To provide funding for this important work to demine the regions.
Yes, I fully agree with you, and thank you for raising this issue. It's one of the big problems and big tragedy, because after the war ended, we had more than 200 people, military and civilians, who have been killed or seriously injured because of the mines. And as you correctly mentioned, they planted mines after the war ended, and we had tragic events, and 2 journalists were killed in Kelbejar on the newly planted mine. And it is very difficult now to demine the area, because physically we don't have a capacity. And our demining agency was created many years ago. Now we are increasing the number of personnel. We are purchasing the new equipment, new machines, including very sophisticated like drones, which can detect the mine's contaminated area, but it takes a lot of time and effort. So far, we had groups of Turkish specialists who helped us to demine, but of course we will need a broad international cooperation. Armenia, unfortunately, was not even reprimanded for that terrible behavior. And we find the mines now which are newly planted, and in the area which makes them to find very difficult. So this is another demonstration of the behavior. As you correctly mentioned, we gave them from 10 to 20 days to leave the territories which they had to leave based on the agreement signed on 10th of November. But they used it for planting mines, for burning houses, which they didn't build, but they settled, for cutting trees, and for doing other ecological disaster. So it demonstrates the behavior, and it's not only behavior of the government, and we must be very open. The level of hatred against those who didn't do anything bad to you, who came only to return their territory and to be able to live on that land. With respect to international support, unfortunately, we did not get any support from any international organization so far. What we do it at our own expense. We wanted to contract several international companies which can help us to speed up the process, but unfortunately the price they want to charge is several times higher than the cost we pay for our demining agency. So they look at it from commercial point of view. Well, we can to a certain degree understand it because it's private companies, but that means that we will not be able, because it's astronomical figures which they want to charge for 1 meter of demining. When EU announced 2.6 billion euros support to Armenia and 140 or 160 million to Azerbaijan, of course, we raised our voice, and on the very high level. And that was another demonstration of double standards, because I said that there is not a single house demolished in Armenia. Why you give them 2.6 billion? And a big part of that will not be a loan, will be a grant, just a gift. And only 100-something million to Azerbaijan, the country which 10,000 square kilometers totally destroyed. And there was no answer, but it was good that later EU started to address this issue, and during my last conversation with President of European Council, Mr. Charles Michel, he told me that they will allocate 5 million euros for demining. We are grateful for that, but of course it will not make big difference. We need a serious support, and also from international NGOs who deal with the mine problems. None of them so far turned their eye towards Azerbaijan. We know that there are several NGOs, foundations, which help countries to get rid of the mines, but in our case, nobody is helping. And everything what is done on the liberated territories is done with a financial source of Azerbaijani budget only. Not a single dollar we got from any country or any international organization. And of course, it is not fair. It is double standards, but what to do? We live in this world. But anyway, no matter who will help us or not, we will clean the area. Of course, it will take more time. We will resettle the former refugees, and we will build Karabakh that will be an example for the world. Thank you, Brenda. Very glad to see you again.
John Roberts. Please, John.
First of all, thank you very much for being here and for organizing a conference, because winning a peace is always every bit as hard as winning a war, and very often a lot harder. I've got two sort of related questions, both concerning energy, because that's my field. The first is, what's the situation regarding the supply of oil and gas, both to Karabakh and to Armenia, as a peace-building mechanism? And the second is, how are the plans developing for a tripartite summit with Turkey and Turkmenistan, and what energy issues will be discussed?
Thank you. With respect to oil and gas delivery to Karabakh, it did not start yet, but of course we have plans to build gas lines, I mean to that part of Karabakh where we are now implementing the reconstruction works. And of course we built power stations, and already not a big number, but more than 20 megawatts of new power stations have been built last year, and 25 megawatt will be built this year. So all Karabakh and Eastern Zengezur is already connected with electric lines, and sometimes we had to bring these lines in the high mountains of 3,500 meters, which have snow 6 months a year. So that has been done. Now we have electricity. With respect to the area which is under control of the Russian peacekeepers, we do not supply any energy there, but the gas pipeline which goes from Armenia to Khankendi is going through the territory which is under our control. And there was a recently explosion there, and for several days there was no gas, and unfortunately we were immediately accused of causing humanitarian catastrophe. Again, double standards, because when the first Karabakh war started, Armenians cut the gas supply from Azerbaijan mainland to Nakhchivan, and for 15 years Nakhchivan, the population of at that time more than 400,000 people, were living without natural gas. And the winters there are much severe. It goes beyond 30. And nobody was accusing Armenia for causing humanitarian disaster for Nakhchivan. Only in 2005, we agreed with Iran to build a pipeline, and now Nakhchivan is 100% gasified. But what we did, we restored the pipeline which was going from Armenia to Russian-controlled part of Karabakh, and now the supply has been restored. What it will be in the future, I don't know. If there'll be a need to use our energy, I think it is possible. It will be much easier and less costly to deliver electric energy and natural gas from, say, Agdam to Hankendi, rather than to bring this gas from Russia, Georgia, Armenia, and then Azerbaijan and Hankendi. But again, if there'll be such a request, we will look at that. With respect to trilateral meeting between Azerbaijan, Turkey, and Turkmenistan, yes, there were the plans to organize such a meeting, but so far the dates have not been yet fixed, and we are waiting for our partners to give us. It was Turkmenistan who who was the initiator, and it will take place in Turkmenistan. Therefore, we are waiting for the dates.
We have on our list also Amanda Paul. Amanda.
Good morning, Mr. President. Thank you very much for the invitation. It was a real pleasure and honor to come here and to have the opportunity to visit Shusha. That's something that I wanted to do for a very long time, so it was a dream come true, if I can put it that way. I'm from the European Policy Centre, a think tank that's in Brussels, so coming from the EU, I would like to ask you a question about the EU. Charles Michel has been very proactive in terms of trying to facilitate dialogue between yourself and Prime Minister Pashinyan and progress the agenda forward. How would you characterize the role of the EU so far in this process? I mean, there's been two meetings so far, if my memory serves me correctly. Could you elaborate on how you see the role of the EU? Is it doing the right thing? Could it do more? And what would you like to see the EU doing more of?
Thank you very much. Thank you for this question. It's really very important for understanding better our plans and prospects for regional cooperation. We highly appreciate the role of EU in the post-conflict normalization, and particularly President of the European Council, Mr. Charles Michel. He visited the region, Azerbaijan and Armenia, last year when we had first very long and very constructive discussions with him about our plans, about EU position. And also we're grateful that they seriously addressed our concern, which I already mentioned, that there was a big disproportion between the financial package to Armenia and to Azerbaijan, and that was corrected. And now we are only waiting for some more specific details, because our position was, and it was delivered to European Union leadership, that Azerbaijan wants to get as much as Armenia in the same proportion, as much loans with the same interest rate from European banks and as much grants. I think that is a very fair position. Then we had, as you know, several sessions of interaction in Brussels. December and April trilateral meetings were organized by Mr. Charles Michel. There was a video conference on February and with the participation of President of France. And also we regularly communicate by telephone. And there is a plan to organize a follow-up of our representatives in the beginning of May, Armenia and Azerbaijan, again in Brussels. So we highly welcome these efforts. For us, European Union is a very important partner. And we have a very broad agenda with EU. Armenia and Azerbaijan conflict never was part of that, because it was dealt with Minsk group and EU was a little bit distant. But now it also is on our agenda, along with the issues like trade, energy, transportation, and humanitarian issues and issues related to democratic development. So we consider EU as a fair broker and welcome the efforts. So I think that's now when the Minsk group co-chairmanship is dysfunctional, I think EU can play, and it plays, a very active role in the normalization process. So we support it, and we see the benefits And by the way, my recent contacts with Armenian colleagues are in Brussels. So Brussels now became my main destination of travels. Yes, and one more thing to add, that we are now in the final stage of agreeing some issues on our new agreement with EU, which is, according to our and EU's assessment, is ready more than 90%. There was a war, there was a COVID that a little bit put it on standby, but I think that we can finalize it pretty soon. We have an agreement, but it was signed many years ago, so new agreement is very comprehensive. It absorbs the new realities after Second Karabakh War, and definitely will also address the new situation in the world.
In our list, we also have Dr. Maxime Gaon from France. Mr. President, for information, that Mr. Maxime Gaon in French court for more than 10 years fights against Armenian lobby groups. Mr. Gaon, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, for welcoming us at this conference. I would like to ask you two questions. The first is about the destruction of cultural monuments in the previously occupied territories. All of us, we saw who destroyed what in these territories and who is ready to rebuild these territories. Unfortunately, not everybody understands that. The European Parliament prefers to blame the victim. The UNESCO, as far as I understood, did not understand quite well. I am among the signatories of the letter to the UNESCO chairwoman, unfortunately. So what belongs to bad faith? What belongs to lack of information? Can we assess that? And what could be done in both cases for a better understanding, in considering that I am firmly convinced that most of the European Union citizens, most of the American citizens are ready to have a fair assessment if they have the right data. My second question is, what role do you see for the ethnic Armenians who remain loyal to their country, namely Azerbaijan, in the future for cooperation, for rebuilding the previously occupied territories? And I'm thinking above all to those who are still in Baku and Ganja today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. With respect to the first question, I would say that, of course, we are very disappointed that not only lack of information causes the improper attitude to the conflict and to the years of occupation, but a deliberate manipulation with facts. Because first, when we started to face this injustice, it seemed to us that we need to work harder, to present our case, to explain that it is Azerbaijani people who is suffering from occupation, that our lands have been a victim of aggression. And we thought that after we say that, everybody will understand and will be treating it fairly. But then we realized that no matter what we say, there is a strong pro-Armenian groups and sentiments and perceptions and beliefs. And no matter what Armenians did throughout the occupation was never, how to say, a kind of a subject of any punishment or even any criticism. For many years I was saying, put sanctions on Armenia. It's the only way how to resolve the conflict, the only way how to avoid war. If you don't put sanctions on Armenia, then they will never leave the territories. Having such a strong lobbying positions in the free co-chair countries, having special military and political arrangements with these countries, they will never leave voluntarily. But unfortunately, it didn't happen. And when we see that sanctions are imposed in other conflicts, we again see the double standards. After the war, there was a kind of a narrative, very strange and based again on fake facts and I would say Azerbaijanophobia, that Azerbaijan will destroy Armenian cultural heritage on the territories which we returned. And UNESCO was knocking the door and planning to come. And of course, we worked with them because we need to have a proper wording of our correspondence. We needed to have full compliance with territorial integrity of Azerbaijan in their public communications. And finally, we already agreed on the text and agreed on the composition of the mission. I'd like to say that for 30 years, we were asking UNESCO to come to occupied territories and to testify, and they always refused. And just 1 year or maybe a year and a half before the Second Karabakh War, our then foreign minister was in UNESCO asking for that, and the answer was that UNESCO is not involved in political issues. And after the war is ended, situation have changed. Why? Because that it was a kind of perception that Armenian historical heritage can be damaged. But the fact that 65 mosques out of 67 were knocked down by Armenians is absolutely ignored, as if this is not a historical heritage, as if it is not a religious heritage. This is a situation which we are facing. But now, after there have been thousands of, tens of thousands of international representatives visiting Shusha, and all of them saw that Armenian church is untouched. On the contrary, it will be also restored, unlike with the mosques which Armenians destroyed. Now the interest from UNESCO to come to the region goes down, because when they come, or if they come, what they will have to report? They will have to report about 65 destroyed mosques. They will have to report that the Armenians kept pigs and cows in Agdam Mosque. And they will have to report that Armenian and Christian and Alban religious heritage is untouched. And we will never do it, and we never did it. And here in Baku, you can see the Armenian church in the center of the city. And 5,000 books, Armenian books we keep there. And what we see in Yerevan, they changed the name of Azerbaijani mosque. They called it Persian mosque. The mosque in Shusha, they also called Persian mosque. And they even invited specialists from Iran to make some repairs in order to change its origin. And there was a diplomatic, note, and the Iranian ambassador then was invited to foreign minister, and we demanded to put an end to that, because that was also part of the legitimization of destruction of Muslim heritage. So this is a difference. Our religious and historical heritage in Azerbaijan belongs to all people of Azerbaijan. And Zoroastric temple, mosque, Catholic church, Orthodox church, Armenian church, and synagogue are all our national heritage, and we preserve them. And everybody who visits Baku, Shusha, Guba, and other places can see. But of course, this double standard approach is something which we already used to live with, unfortunately. But again, I think the meetings like this one, and Shusha being now a kind of a city where every week we have very important international events, and soon we'll have another Hari Bülbül festival there, with participation of folklore groups from 10 countries, that will also be something which no one can ignore or neglect or turn a blind eye on. Second question? Oh, yes. With that respect, also, our position is very clear. And I already said that Armenians who live in Karabakh, we consider them our citizens. And we hope that they will also soon understand that living as citizens of Azerbaijan, they will have all rights and their security will be protected. Azerbaijan, unlike Armenia, is a multi-ethnic country, and all ethnic groups who live here live in peace and dignity, including Armenians. We have Armenian minority, and there will never any issue with that respect. But of course, for that, there should be put an end to Azerbaijanophobic propaganda in Armenia. Demonizing Azerbaijanis, creating a mythology about us will not serve the cause of peace. Plus, what happened after the war demonstrates that we don't have any bad intentions. We want peace, we want recognition of our territorial integrity, and the living standards in Azerbaijan are much higher than in Armenia, not to mention in Russian-controlled Karabakh, temporarily controlled by Russian peacekeepers. Therefore, I think that the understanding will come, and we already get some messages from Armenians in Karabakh, very positive messages. We already started some preliminary contacts on different levels, don't want to go much in details, but it's already started, and this once again demonstrates our intention. They can be part of the rapid economic development. They can feel themselves much more safe, secure, and comfortably within the unified Azerbaijani state, but they need to put down the separatist trends and separatist aspirations. They also need to understand the reality. They need to look at the map. They need to see the geography, and they need to understand that hundreds of thousands of Azerbaijanis will return within a visible future to Kelbecer, Lachin, Shusha, Agdam, and they have to live in this environment, have to live like neighbors, put down hostility, isolate separatists, bring separatists to justice, and then I think they will see the benefits also.
Now, on this, we have Vantislav Sabev. Vantislav.
Yes, thank you, Excellency. Good morning, Mr. President. My name reveals also my country of origin. Even if I come from Switzerland, it is the brothers in Bulgaria who are very grateful to your country for restoring their safety this week. It was an important help. Now, coming from Bulgaria, from Switzerland now, and representing the University of Geneva, I'm working on interfaith and intercultural dialogue. You answered in your previous response reminding the culture of intercultural tradition in Azerbaijan. And this is a model which is working well in the region, and we are looking forward to see it replicated across the region and even beyond. A very clear message you gave also, it was an appeal to organizations in Western Europe. You said that time is ripe for people-to-people contacts at NGO levels. And when we try in the last few months to organize such events, we were told, be careful about the balance in the narrative between the history and the message towards the future. We want to focus about reconstruction, about putting efforts in building communities, integrating communities. What would be your advice in managing this balance between countering fake history, distorted historical message, versus focusing on the future on an integrated message?
Well, I think that, first of all, there be a clear understanding about which part of history is fake and which part of history is not, because unfortunately in Armenian historiographic science, the fakes are every step you make, you see the fakes, including with respect to Azerbaijani lands, including with respect to the history of Karabakh. They even, and by the way, I can tell you that this fake history policy last 5-6 years even had a new dimension. They started to officially name Azerbaijani cities with Armenian names, with fake names, including, for instance, city of Shusha, which they started to call Shushi, which never was Shushi. And by the way, I don't know what Shushi means and why Shushi must be considered an Armenian name. I don't understand. If you look at all the maps, historical maps, if you look at Soviet encyclopedia, you will see Shusha. But that is a product of the recent 5-6 years. Also, the fake history about Armenians in Azerbaijan, we know the history, and it is clear also, it can be seen in Wikipedia. Look at Kürekçay Peace Agreement, 1805, who signed it? Ibrahim Khan, Karabakh and Shusha, and Russian general. There was not a mentioning of Armenians. Armenians started to be brought to that area from Persia, from Eastern Anatolia later, after Turkmenchay and Gulistan agreement. All these are historical facts. We don't say that because they live in Karabakh for 200 years, they should be ethnically cleansed. No, but the history should not be manipulated with. And the same is with some other historical so-called documents which they try to present. But I think that if we want to achieve the goal, I think the main area of concentration should be future. Because if to go too far in the history, that's actually what's the reason for Armenian failure. Because they always dreamed how to achieve something which they thought they lost. They always were basing their ideology, education on the past. And they lost the future. As far as the future is concerned, I think what will be important now to start contacts between representatives of civil society. And we are ready for that. And we discussed it with EU representatives, with representatives of United States government, and made a proposal to organize these kind of contacts. There have been also one contact organized by the Russian government in Moscow. A group of intellectuals from Azerbaijan and Armenia met there. And I think that this format can also be continued. And I think that we can have these meetings also in Baku and Yerevan. In other words, to start talking to each other, because if we reach an agreement with Armenian government on peace, this agreement must be also part of the national consensus. We understand it. Otherwise, it will be very difficult to sign this agreement and to implement. But how to achieve national consensus when they continue to demonize Azerbaijan and present us as kind of people and country who wants to destroy them? No, we wanted only to restore our territorial integrity and to live in peace. So my recommendation would be, because I think its time already have come, 1.5 years have passed, time passes very quickly, to organize these kind of events in Europe, in Russia, in Turkey, in America, to start public diplomacy. And also maybe on the level of experts, I think it's also possible. And I said in the beginning that there could be some events in between Shusha international forums. I think one event can also be, part of that, to invite experts from Armenia, those people who want peace, who advocate for peace, not for hatred, and to start this. I think ADA can be a very good, home for that. Thank you.
In our list, we have a Rick Fawn. Rick Fawn.
Thank you very much, Excellency. This is a tremendous opportunity for us. And the trip yesterday, I think, was extraordinary. It made the seeming impossible possible. And it was also very important to see what Azerbaijan has achieved in such a short time. The question I would ask, seeing also that we have recognized some of the obstacles ahead, is to hear from you what the region could look like and Azerbaijan's contribution to the South Caucasus in 10 years' time? Thank you.
Will be irresponsible from my side to give such a prognosis because, you know, situation in the region is closely connected to the situation in the world. And I think situation in the world, in the post-Soviet area, will seriously influence the regional situation. Therefore, having this prognosis, I think we need to have in mind two scenarios. One scenario is a peaceful future for post-Soviet area. Another scenario is not a peaceful future. Taking into account now the war between Russia and Ukraine, we do not know when that war will stop, what will be the post-war situation. But with respect to Azerbaijan, I think that in 10 years' time, of course, we will be much stronger, and I hope that by that time, and maybe even earlier, all the disagreements and these problems with Armenia will be resolved. And the region of Southern Caucasus will be firmly integrated, and three countries of the Southern Caucasus will already have close cooperation. There are opportunities for that. Azerbaijan, as a generator of regional projects, whether it's transportation, energy, played already important role in this trilateral cooperation between Azerbaijan, Turkey, and Georgia, which actually then became a foundation for broad European cooperation. Without that, what we did in 2006, Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan pipeline, today's energy security of Europe would be much more vulnerable because then gas pipeline would have been built. So as a generator and as, of course, the biggest economy in the Southern Caucasus with a great potential to grow, because only these 3 months our economy grew 7% and our export more than 90%, including 45% in non-energy related export. And generator of wealth and generator of stability. But it will depend, of course, on the agenda in Armenia, what will happen there, the plans of Armenian government for peace agenda, whether they will be implemented or not. But I think that politically, it should be absolutely new composition. From economic point of view of regional transportation ties, there should be absolutely new map, because we already created a new transportation map. If we look from 2008, when we started working on Baku-Tbilisi cars, and 2017 when it was done, it's absolutely new picture. I think that maybe before that there could be more interaction between Southern Caucasus and Central Asia. Today it doesn't happen. It is kind of a sporadic, and mainly it comes through Azerbaijan, through our infrastructure facilities. But I think Azerbaijan, as a Caspian little state and state of Caucasian state, has a special role in this format. It can happen. So these are our plans. Usually our plans, when they're officially announced, they've been implemented. What I'm saying now is my thoughts. I do not yet make it an official agenda, but we are working on that. I think there is a big potential for Azerbaijan to join political consultations which Central Asian countries have between themselves. You know, there is a format of 5 countries. We have very close historical connections and traditional ties with these countries and the peoples of these countries. Plus, Caspian Sea should be a bigger bridge between cultures and between economies. Will Armenia be part of that? I don't know. I think it will be good for all that they are. And there is opportunity. What we offered, and which is called Zengezur Corridor, will cross their territory. I'm sure it will, but again they are losing time. Because we already are building the highway and railroad to Armenian border, and highway will be ready, railroad will be ready by the end of this year, and highway maybe later. So if they are not part of that, then they'll be bypassed. And last month we already signed MOU with Iran on building bridges, bypassing Armenia. So look, we bypass them in the projects related to gas and oil pipelines, and Georgia is benefiting from that, getting good money from tariffs. We bypass them building the road to Kars through Tbilisi, and now when they have historical chance to demonstrate their people that there can be benefits of the military failure at war, and that benefit is being part of the region and getting access to the wealth. Again, there, for 1.5 years, they block it. They did not give us the geographical coordinates where the road will go through Megri region, and they did not start even feasibility study on construction of the railroad. So our 60 kilometers of the railroad is already ready, and 40 kilometers left, as I said, maybe by the end of the year or in the beginning of next year, it will be ready. And then we'll build a bridge, and we already agreed with Iranian government, and they will be bypassed. So my prognosis are based, of course, on our agenda, but I do not know what will be the agenda in Armenia and what will be a global situation in the world, because since we met last time, situation in the world already is different, and of course the world will never be as it was before February.
Now let's have Dr. Jingfeng.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Thank you for arranging the time to chat.
Introduce your institute as well.
Thank you for taking your time to communicate with us and answering the question in such an open way. I'm a researcher from University of Cambridge in UK, and my research area focusing on the China's relationship with Eurasian countries as well as the decarbonization in Eurasian countries. I have two questions. The first one is regarding China's relationship with Azerbaijan under the framework of the Belt Road Initiative. In 2013, when Chinese President Xi Jinping visited Kazakhstan, he called for Eurasian countries to jointly build, to promote integration of Eurasian countries and jointly build the Silk Road economic belt. And Azerbaijan and China signed a cooperation document, MOU, on that. But from the external sources there, the cooperation areas and the projects are not clear to observers. So I would like to ask you to elaborate a bit on the cooperation areas between the two countries under the framework. And with our recent Azerbaijan's effort to promote integration in South Caucasus, do you think there will be, will you foresee more prospect to strengthen cooperation with Chinese partners? And then the second question is regarding the renewable energy development in Azerbaijan. I think with the global decarbonization trend in Azerbaijan, we gave decarbonization and renewable energy development due meanings by not only promoting renewable energy development nationwide, but also by building the smart city in the Karabakh region. In this context, we give the dual meanings of renewable energy development, not only in the context of decarbonization, but also in the context of the post-conflict reconstruction. So following the vision that we released from the government, I want to invite you to update us the current status of implementing green energy development in the Karabakh region and nationwide. What are the main challenges forcing ahead? Thank you very much.
Thank you. First of all, on our relations with China, I'd like to say that we consider these relations of strategic importance. I'm very glad that these relations developed very successfully. During my numerous meetings with the President Xi Jinping, we broadly discussed the bilateral agenda and also regional issues. And to illustrate our relations, it's enough to quote Mr. Xi Jinping, who called me the big friend of China. And I think it's a good answer to all the questions. At the same time, he is a very good friend of Azerbaijan, and we always are in contact. I was among a limited number of world leaders who was invited in 2019 at the conference, One Belt and One Road. And we consider that also as a sign of a special attention to Azerbaijan and special importance. We already started to receive cargoes from China through Caspian, through Baku-Tbilisi-Kars railroad, but not in big volumes, because we clearly understood that China has a diversified supply routes through different sources. And we just tried to make our route more attractive. But recently, we got several messages from Chinese companies that they seriously want to increase the transportation of cargoes through the middle corridor, as it is called in China, through Azerbaijan, Caspian, Georgia, and either to Georgian ports or to Turkish city of Kars. So these are new opportunities for us, and our transportation infrastructure is brand new. It's brand new seaport, biggest Caspian fleet among the Caspian littoral states, railroad. But of course, if we think about dramatic increase of cargoes, we need also to invest in expansion of our transportation handling potential, because all our projects were based on existing volumes of cargoes and slowly growing volumes of cargoes. But today, we see the demand for dramatic growth of cargoes. Therefore, instructions have already been given by corresponding governmental structures to give me a report about what we can do, how we can increase the capacity of our trade seaport, which capacity now is 15 million tons, and we can, relatively short period of time, increase it up to 25 million tons. Then, of course, the construction of new ferry boats and tankers in our Caspian shipping factory also is necessary to be able to transport all that volumes through Azerbaijan. In other words, it's a new, absolutely, situation with new opportunities, but we see our cooperation not only in the area of transit and transportation, but in a broader, having a very good political cooperation. We would like to see Chinese companies as investors here. We are now in the process of creation of a free zone, Alat Free Zone, which will host first residents, I hope, next year. And it's in a very good location, just next to the seaport, a big area, and the regulation there is very attractive to international companies. So we see a lot of potential in our relations, and of course we'll do everything in order to to develop them. Yeah, about the renewables, yes, we already started, and several years ago we started slowly to evaluate our potential, and after liberation in Karabakh, of course, that area also was evaluated. And according to preliminary information in the liberated area, we have a potential of 9,200 megawatts of solar and wind energy. Unfortunately, after Armenia signed the Capitulation Act on 10 November 2020, they used this 20 days time when they had to leave Kalbajar for destruction. And they, apart from houses and trees, they destructed 30 hydropower stations. Can you imagine? They used that time which we gave to them to collect their belongings and to go. They used that time for destruction. And now everything is documented. So we started the reconstruction in Kalbajar and in Terter. So as I said before, 20 megawatts already have been commissioned. 25 will be this year, but this is only hydro. And there is more potential for hydro. For solar and wind in Karabakh, we are now in the final stage of negotiations with BP on 240 megawatt solar power plant in Jabrail, and also with international companies about 100 megawatt of wind power plant in Kalbajar. But apart from that, starting from January this year, we already had two important events, two groundbreaking ceremonies to build one solar and one wind power station, total capacity 430 megawatt, by Saudi Arabia leading company in that area, Aqua Power, and another project by a company from UAE, Masdar. And this is really a big contribution to our energy system and big sign and demonstration of attractiveness of Azerbaijan. We are now evaluating finally the potential of the Caspian Sea with respect to wind power station. Preliminary figures really are enormous, so we'll need to have a very thorough study about that. As far as Karabakh is concerned, I already announced it as a green energy zone, and that will be the case, smart city and green energy zone, and we will, I think if all what we plan, I don't want to go into much details, is implemented, we will not only have substantial part of our energy coming from wind and sun. I think we have target of 30%, but I think it can go to 50 and more. But also what is important, we will save a lot of natural gas for export, which is also needed. And just these two power stations which I mentioned, by Aqua Power and by Masdar, they will save about 400 million cubic meters of gas. It is not a big amount, but for some countries, it's a substantial amount. But also what we do, we are now in the process of active reforms of SOCAR. There's a new management in SOCAR. SOCAR will finally transform into a transparent international energy company, I'm sure, because the new management has these instructions. Subsequently, there'll be reduction in losses, because there are a lot of losses we have in gas. And some losses are justified because outdated infrastructure. Some losses are very suspicious. So optimization, transparency, corporate management of our leading company, SOCAR, I'm sure will give us additional source. It already gives us. I just want to talk about it before it happened and before we have official figures. But we really have a potential to substitute large part of our energy which comes from gas to solar and wind. And also, just going a little bit further from what you asked, we're already evaluating the opportunity of joining the project between Georgia and Romania, the electric cable under the Black Sea, which will be primarily used by us because we have, how to say, extra production. We export electric energy now to 4 countries and have a plan to expand. And our electric energy is needed in Europe, along with our gas. And the last point, which I want also you to know, that with EU, we, a couple of months ago, started the format which is called Energy Dialogue, which is a very comprehensive program. It covers oil, gas, oil products, renewables, hydrogen. And on hydrogen, we are very active. And all the instructions have been given. So hydrogen is the future, and we understand it, and we have this potential. So we are always ahead of the processes, ahead of innovations. Maybe not ahead, but to put it correctly, maybe ahead of some other countries, but one step back of technological developments. And I am absolutely sure that renewables will change completely the energy market and give us additional opportunity to, how to say, to save the nature and to get more benefits for our people.
Now, Alexandra Matas.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. President. My name is Alexandra Matas. I'm representing here the Geneva Center for Security Policy in Switzerland. We had a very enlightening trip yesterday to Shusha, and I'm very honored also to be here today and have this very interesting discussion with you, and thank you very much for your openness. Mr. President, in your introductory remarks, you said that you wish to turn Karabakh to most peaceful region in the world, and you also mentioned in replying to my colleague from Switzerland question that we need to address the problem of demonizing Azerbaijan by the Armenian side. So after that many years of conflict, my question is, how do you prepare your own public here, your own population to peace? There are a lot of hostile perceptions of the other part, which is understandable in the situation. And what are the ways to overcome those perceptions? What are the ways in order to reconcile and also to have this lasting peace with your neighbor? Thank you.
Thank you. Very important question. Thank you for addressing it, because it's very important for future, for peace and for interaction. But of course, we treat it from a realistic point of view, and we understand that it will not be easy. And you should do everything on time. You know, after liberation, though I can tell you that the wounds of Azerbaijani people were not healed during all these 30 years. But after liberation and after people started to visit the territories, you know, there are regular bus trips to Shusha, to Agdam, and when they saw with their own eyes, and when I first went there and saw it with my own eyes, it was a shock. We could not even imagine the level of hatred to people who didn't do you any harmful thing. Because we lived side by side, and in Shusha, in Khankendi, in other places, and never did anything that could be considered as hostile. So such a hatred, erasing cities, digging out the dead bodies, it's unbelievable. So it's imaginable. If I felt that, what could people who lost their beloved ones feel? And I understand their pain, I share their pain, and I myself will never forget atrocities and barbarism. I will not be able to forget, and I don't want to forget, because we need to remember. We need to remember, because it's part of our history, tragic history. At the same time, we must remember and always be ready to defend ourselves. But at the same time, our peace agenda cannot be implemented without public support. Also, we also understand that after the Second Karabakh War, Armenian society have wounds. It's understandable. And if our wounds did not heal for 30 years, we understand that their wounds also will be bleeding. This is the reality. But what to do? We need to take responsibility. And the leaders, they are leading the countries also because of that, to take responsibility and to try to persuade your people that for our interests, for strategic future, we need peace. We need peace. We know history of wars. We know the history of Second World War. And after, I think, 10, 20 years, those who were killing each other started to do business. And there are many examples of that. Whether we'll be ready as a society or not, I don't know. But I think you all also know that there is a very special atmosphere in Azerbaijan society after the victory. There is unity. There is a how to say, permanent, connection between what we do and how people react. We consult with people our plans. For instance, with reconstruction of the cities, when the master plans of Agdam and Fizuli was to be approved, that was approved with the participation of the famous representatives of this region, because it will be them who live there. Therefore, there is a pretty high level of trust in society of what we are doing. And that was always the case, but after the victory, of course, it's much, much bigger. And I think that Azerbaijani society will understand me when I talk about peace. It's not easy, I understand, but we don't need another war, and we must protect ourselves from any risks of any revenge from Armenia. Therefore, on one side, we should not forget. On the other side, we should strengthen and modernize our army. And at the same time, in parallel, we should prepare the societies. And my, proposals to organize these people-to-people contacts, NGO, journalists, intellectuals, aimed at that. That must be a basis for peace. It will take long, but there is no alternative. Alternative is worse. So once again, thank you for raising this very important question. Thank you.
Dr. Vali Kaleji.
Thank you, Mr. President. Oh, yes. Okay. Thank you, Mr. President. I'm Vali Kaleji from Tehran, Iran. I'm very pleased to be attending the International Conference on the Caucasus in Baku for the second time after the Second Karabakh War. As you know, the relations between two countries have developed significantly in recent years, including recent agreement between Tehran and Baku to build 55-kilometer highway and railway line between Zangilan and Nakhchivan via Iran that you mentioned it in your speech. But on the other hand, there are some concerns that need to be addressed. One of these concerns is what's happened as the 5th Congress of World Azerbaijanis Congress in Shusha last week. Unfortunately, some Azeris Iranians who attend the summit spoke openly against the territorial integrity and the national security of Iran, as well as separatism of other regions of northwestern of my country. Unfortunately, the dream of the forming a greater Azerbaijan and uniting the two sides of Aras River clearly raised by these individuals and groups, and this issue caused concern and unhappiness to many of my colleagues and also people inside Iran. Yesterday, I talked with Mr. Hikmet Hacıyev in this regard. Mr. President, you are aware of Iran's positions, Iran's position in defining of the territorial integrity of the Republic of Azerbaijan in the last 3 decades. Iran's position in the Second Karabakh War was also quite clear. The common language, religion, religious, and values of Azeris regions of Iran and people of the Republic of Azerbaijan is a great capacity and social capital for the development relations between 2 countries. And it should not become a political tool for separatism and creating difference and tension between 2 countries. These people have been invited to an official and governmental meeting in Shusha, and we expect the government of our Ministry of the Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Azerbaijan to react these dear statements and interview and speech and their speech in order to reduce the concerns and discomfort inside Iran. I will be very happy to know your position and opinion in this regard, which will definitely be reflected inside Iran. And also, my short question is about determining the borders between Republic of Azerbaijan and Armenia after the Second Karabakh War that you mentioned in your speech. We heard a lot of news about the basis of the Soviet-era maps, including maps of Soviet Ministry of Defense in 1920 decades to define the borders between 2 countries. Including it was discussed during your meeting with Nikol Pashinyan and Vladimir Putin in Sochi. The question is, which official map of the Soviet Union, was agreed between you and Armenia and Russia for determining the borders? Again, thanks for your hospitality and for your kindness and invitation to this conference. Thank you very much.
Talking about the maps, we do not have so far any kind of basis for that. And we haven't seen the maps which you mentioned. And our position is that while defining the border, we should take into account history and, of course, the maps which were available and which are available after the Sovietization of the Southern Caucasus. We cannot concentrate on only one map. There have been many maps, starting from 1918, when Yerevan was part of Azerbaijan, and also before 1920, November 1920, where Zangezur was part of Azerbaijan. And what is today Iranian-Armenian border was inhabited by Azerbaijanis and had no relations to Armenian nation. November 1920, it was a decision of Soviet government to give Zangezur to Armenia. But when it was given to Armenia, it was not given in today's shape, not in 42 kilometers, but much narrower. Then, by different tricks, Armenians managed to expand the territory, which today is the only border between Armenia and Iran, and expand it up to 42 kilometers. Therefore, our position is that we will take all the maps, starting from for instance, 18 or even before, until 1991, when Soviet Union collapsed. But that, of course, will be part of negotiations of our joint working groups. Addressing your first comments, I just wanted to clarify with you. You mentioned somebody contested the territorial integrity of Iran. Was it a member of our government who did it? Of Azerbaijani government who did it? But you mentioned Shusha Congress. It was member of our government who contested Iranian territorial integrity.
Not governmental.
But whom?
It is, for example, is a center of Tabriz studies in Ankara or in Turkey. Is some individual and groups.
So
the non-governmental participate in the conference.
It doesn't have any connection with Azerbaijani government, no?
No, but they participate in this conference in Shusha in Azerbaijan.
But not Azerbaijani citizen.
Yes, I know, I accept. But they participate in an official meeting in the inside of Azerbaijan.
You know, today you see how many participants from different countries here, but each of them represent their country. And for instance, if you be, for instance, a citizen of some other country and say something, Iranian government should not be responsible for that. That's why I think your comments, they have nothing to do with Azerbaijan-Iranian relations. Position of our government and the government of Iran on territorial integrity of two countries is very well known and is not questionable. And on many occasions, we and Iranian colleagues publicly elaborated on that. There have been more than 400 participants. And in Azerbaijan, in the democratic society, people are free to say what they want. They have their position. We can agree or disagree, but we did not control the participants. We did not give them the thesis, what they can say and what they cannot say. Azerbaijan is a free country, and everyone, our citizens, foreign citizens, they are free to say whatever they want. Of course, if it is not contradicting our legislation. But at the same time, we do not bear responsibility for those who live abroad and have some other views on different items. Important is that Azerbaijani government and its representatives in their remarks are very responsible in relations with our neighboring countries and in general with all countries. But as a small illustration to what you said, I can tell you that there are a number of people who got shelter in Iran and who on a regular basis contest territorial integrity of Azerbaijan. During the Caspian Littoral Summit in Aktual, during my meeting with then President Hassan Rouhani, I gave him a list of almost 20 Azerbaijanis who live in Iran and on a regular basis through media and social network. They not only contest the territorial integrity of Azerbaijan, but they use such a vocabulary that is not appropriate in the normal society. And we demanded these people to be handed over to Azerbaijan because of their direct participation in the lethal attack on policemen in the city of Ganja. And we have evidences, but unfortunately none of them have been handed over. Therefore, if one person who is not a citizen of Azerbaijan said something in Shusha, Shusha is an open city. There are thousands of people come there and express their will. Even participated at the event which was organized by Azerbaijan. Should not be a reason for this reaction. We should look at the official statements of officials, Iranians and Azerbaijani officials. They are saying what I said. Territorial integrity is the red line, And our territorial integrity was always questioned by Armenia. And I think that we should concentrate on that and not to pay attention to some comments which Azerbaijan has nothing to do with.
We also have in our list Dr. Khalid Taimur Akram. Dr. Khalid.
Thank you very much. My name is Khalid Taimur and I am from Islamabad, Pakistan, sir. And thank you very much for inviting us again. Last year in the same hall, we met you, and since last year till now, we have been following whatever development has been done in the Karabakh region. And yesterday, we visited Fazuli and Susha, and it was very, very impressive. And we were told that airport was made in 7-8 months, and I think that's a great achievement and should be known to the world. And probably you can invite the Guinness Book over here, and they should also know that what kind of development we can do in this part of the world also. Now, sir, before my question, I have a suggestion that as you have declared Susha as the cultural capital, so going back to Susha's history, which starts from 1752, we have been seeing that it has remained at the center of the culture and poet and all those things. So I would suggest that if Azerbaijan can start off with some kind of website by the name of Friends of Susha, so that all the people who want to become part of this cultural thing can register themselves over there, and then in times to come, whenever something happens, some kind of cultural event or something happen, they can get to know it and come over here. So this idea of Friends of Susha can be a cultural platform, not only for the people of this region, but for the people around the world for all these things. Now, coming over to my question, is about the economic transformation and the different transport corridors. As we have seen that in last 1 year, we had a trial cargo coming from Pakistan via Iran to Azerbaijan. The direct flights have also started, and in South Asia and Southeast Asia, we are looking forward to become part of these transport corridors, which you very strongly advocate, and probably you are the only leader in this region who has not only been talking about South Caucasus, but beyond the regional connectivity. So my question is regarding your thoughts on the regional connectivity beyond South Caucasus region, and also Zengezur corridor, which is very important for Azerbaijan. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your proposal. We will, of course, address it. I think it's a very good idea to have such a group, Friends of Susha. I'm sure there'll be a lot of members of this group. Maybe we need to think about how to formalize this, and maybe you can give maybe some more, proposals about that. And with respect to the corridors, yes, Azerbaijan was working actively on the north-south corridor, and our geographical location is very advantageous, but as I always said, without infrastructure, it doesn't mean a lot. So what we were talking just before, answering a question about Azerbaijan-China relations, was east-west corridor, but north-south corridor is as important as east-west, and it is now partly in operation, but there is a missing part in Iran, the railroad between Astara and Rasht. I think it's something more than 160 kilometers, which do not exist. And if it is built, then there will be a railroad route from north through Azerbaijan, Iran, and Persian Gulf. And that could be a very important international corridor. It works already, but you have to reload the cargo from train to trucks because part of the railroad is missing. And at the same time, from time point of view, this is very attractive, and I know that there is a plan to connect the port of Gwadar in Pakistan through this connection. At the same time, this route also can work not only from south to north, but also from south to west, using Azerbaijan's infrastructure from Azerbaijan via Georgia to Turkey. And as you correctly mentioned, the Zengezur corridor, which will be another route. And if we look at the map, we will see that from point of view of distance and accessibility, this also is very important. And we expect a lot of new cargos coming from Asia, from Pakistan, from China, at the same time from Central Asian countries. And all our railroad network is interconnected. We have connection with northern border, southern border, eastern border, and Zangezur corridor will go in the southeast. So these are all part of our overall transportation agenda. The only thing missing in Azerbaijan is 40 kilometers, which we are building to Armenian border. And then on our territory, everything will be ready. So our neighbors need also to do their part of the work so that this connection is fully in operation.
Mr. President, almost more than now 2 hours you are spending with us, and thank you for your precious time. If you, with your permission, we have a couple of the questions.
Yes,
we can
yes,
take them.
sure.
Daniel Pompier. Daniel.
Hello, Mr. President. There is a huge debate in my country, in Italy, about the need to overcome the so-called Russian dependency on gas. I know that you had frequent contacts with our Prime Minister, Mario Draghi, and our Minister for Foreign Affairs, Luigi Di Maio, was here. You mentioned the Italian-Azerbaijani University, recently inaugurated. So I'd like to know, so is Azerbaijan going to replace, at least partly, the Russian dependency on gas, which in Italy we strongly want to get rid of Russian gas because of our political position on the war on Ukraine? And is there a timeline for this? And how will affect relation between Azerbaijan and Russia, if will affect? And one more thing, I recently wrote with an Azerbaijani colleague a book about Shusha, a brief history of Shusha, and I would like to donate you, maybe I can hold.
Thank you.
It's written in Italian, but there are a lot of pictures, and it's a brief history. But I know you can understand the language
we will
because you are a very close friend to our country. There are pictures of you too.
Thank you very much.
And that's it. There's a first book written in Italian, I guess in a Western language devoted to Shusha. It's an introductory history of the
Thank
city.
you very much for that, and we will definitely translate it. So far we'll look at the pictures. but yeah, you will give it to me later. Thank you. And with respect to the gas, I'd like to express our position a little bit broader. We implement all our commitments. All the contracts which have been signed with our consumers are being implemented 100%. Today, Azerbaijani gas is being exported to Georgia, Turkey, Bulgaria, Greece, and Italy. So Italy is, along with Turkey, the biggest recipients of our gas. Last year, it was more than 9 billion cubic meters. And we, of course, we're planning our gas development projects based on the existing contracts. And existing contracts have this capacity, this volume. We do not produce more because there is nowhere to sell. And if there is a demand, which, as you mentioned, is now urgent, then we need, first of all, to see about the sources, because our production is calculated on local consumption and exports. We do not produce more than that because there will be nowhere to sell. With this situation, when we received several demands and requests not only from Italy but from some other European countries about increase of supply, first of all is the source. We need to find the source. And as I said, partly it will be due to the optimization of the losses of gas internally, partly it will be due to the solar and wind substitution of natural gas, and partly it will be due to the new production. Production from new fields, we expect next year already from Absheron field to have 1.5 billion cubic meters more. And we expect from some other fields. Apart from that, of course, there is a capacity of the pipelines also is important. Southern Gas Corridor is an integrated pipeline system, which, for instance, TANAP has one diameter and TAP has different diameters. TANAP can transport more than 30 BCM, TAP can transport 10 BCM. Why? Because it was a market. We were supposed to sell to Italy 8 BCM. And for that purpose, the shareholders of TANAP, including SOCAR, which has only 20% there, designed the pipeline, how to say, volume so that not to have additional expenses. We did not expect additional gas to come in the nearest future. Therefore, design of the TAP was different. Is it possible to expand it? Yes, it is possible. By adding pump stations, it can be expanded up to 20 billion cubic meters. In other words, Italy can get as much as twice as much as they get today. But for that purpose, TAP team should get together, and that was part of my discussions with Prime Minister Draghi and then with Minister De Maio, who visited us here. Shareholders of TAP need to agree on additional investment program, how to expand it, and to look from technical point of view. I don't want to go into too much technical details, but it is not something which can be done in 1 month. It is not possible technically. So, in the meantime, there are other ways to have interconnectors. For instance, now the construction of interconnector between Bulgaria and Greece is in final stage. And I got information from our Bulgarian colleagues that by September it will be in operation. There are other projects to interconnect European gas distribution network. So all that is on our agenda. We never planned to replace Russian gas. It is not possible because of the difference of volumes. And we never had any intention to compete on the European market. We just wanted to have an access to European market because it is the best. It is regulated by regulations. It is stable. And it's a market with the highest price. Today we sell the gas to different consumers, and the best price is in Europe, so it's commercial. So we didn't have any intention to have a rivalry or competition with Russia, and I can tell you that our energy policy was never questioned by Russia. We never had any kind of discussions or kind of questions, so I'm sure this will not negatively influence our relations with Russia. Thank you.
Our next question to Mrs. Alena Livko.
Your Excellency, thank you for having us here today, and thank you for your time. My name is Alena Livko. I am head of strategy of a London-based think tank, Henry Jackson Society, but I am also a former member of Parliament of Ukraine, and my question stems from that today. Based on the experience that Azerbaijan had with the war, with the long-term occupation, with the liberation of territories now, what one advice would you personally have for Ukraine today? Thank you.
Well, based on our experience, the most important is never agree to occupation. You know, during times of negotiations, there were different moments and different messages which I was receiving from Western colleagues. And one of them was that you have to take into account the reality. Azerbaijan lost the First Karabakh War, and your, how to say, actions must be based on the reality. There have been attempts to, how to say, advise us that we need to consider issue related to our territorial integrity. And I was always saying no. I was saying that never Azerbaijan, myself, and the people of Azerbaijan will agree to create another Armenian fake state on our territory. Never. If necessary, we will fight until the death. And my comments sometimes were interpreted as very hostile, aggressive. I was always criticized for rhetorics. Armenian leaders always were praised for being constructive. Yes, they were constructive. They wanted to seal the occupation. They wanted us to agree to give independence to separatists in Nagorno-Karabakh. They wanted to keep big part of our territory, particularly territory between former Nagorno-Karabakh autonomous oblast and Armenia under their control. And my position was no, we will never agree. So first, based on our experience, is never agree on violation of territorial integrity in any case. Second, what lesson I learned from this time of occupation, to rely on your own resources. Third, do not rely on international organizations' decisions and resolutions. They don't have any value. UN Security Council adopted 4 resolutions demanding withdrawal of Armenian troops, complete and immediate, from our territories, which were not implemented for 27 years. We implemented them themselves. And those who adopted those resolutions, 3 countries, permanent members of Security Council, were co-chairs of the Minsk group. And I was telling also them, why don't you implement resolutions which you adopted? And the answer was obvious. The situation with occupation was acceptable to them. It was acceptable to Armenia, it was acceptable to Minsk group co-chairs, it was not acceptable to us. And we were minority. And we had to live in the real world and understand that there'll be no help from international community. I'm talking now not about situation in Ukraine, it's a little bit different in this respect, but about us. And of course, we needed to have strong army, but for that we needed strong economy. So everything was done consequently, one after another or sometimes in parallel. And we needed new generation of those who will go until the death to defend their homeland. And that generation was raised. And those who fought and died for Karabakh, absolute majority of them have never seen Karabakh. The young generation, patriotic, with high motivation. Of course, the most important is to have strong army, and we did it. And that was #1 for me as president for all years. That's why our military spendings were #1 in comparison with other. #2 was education. But that was also important, because without that, you will not raise patriotic people who will go and return the lands back. And of course, the high motivation. We were motivated, we were ready to go until the end, regardless who will be on Armenian side. And we recognized that there'll be a lot on Armenian side. And it happened, but it didn't stop us. And during the war, I was saying that I'm ready to stop publicly many times when Armenian Prime Minister gives me a timetable for withdrawal. We didn't want this war. and we fought on our territory. And he always refused. But when he agreed on 9 November to give us a date to, that was already after we liberated Shusha. Then we stopped. We did not fight any extra hour because we didn't want people to die. And we liberated the rest part based on the Capitulation Act. So that's how we fought, how we prepared. And if you ask me what are the most important among all of them, I would say absolutely confident it is a spirit. This is the most important. You will never win a country or people who have a spirit to defend themselves. It can be only temporary. And we demonstrated it, and now we are proud of that. And we support territorial integrity of Ukraine, of all other countries. Do it publicly. Do not hide behind the big trees. We say what we mean. Yes, we have good relations with Russia, but with Ukraine we also have good relations. And the principles of international law should not be interpreted based on political preferences. We were always a subject of that because even before events in Ukraine, always territorial integrity of Georgia and Moldova always was articulated very openly by international community. And when it came to us, always there was a message, go and agree peacefully. But how to agree peacefully with aggressor who don't want to leave your territory? We tried, and I tried for almost 17 years. But then we saw it's not possible. And then we saw that the more we want to do it peacefully, the more aggressor becomes more arrogant and aggressive. And they already started to frighten us with new war for new territories and saying things like Karabakh is Armenia. But now what they say? Now they say Karabakh is Azerbaijan. And who says that? The same people who said Karabakh is Armenia in 2019. We created new reality with our own, how to say, hands and with our soul. So that's what we experienced, and I think it's important for every country, for dignity, for territorial integrity, and for justice.
Now then, Nina Luther-John. Nina.
Thank you very much, Excellency, and it's also worked at the Institute for Conflict and Violence Research. I feel my question has been answered already by you, so I guess this is the fate of having a late one. Sorry, I wrote it down here. How do you see the future of economic cooperation with both Russia and the EU in the context of the current developments? You touched upon on the new situation and the recently signed agreement with the EU. Maybe you could just elaborate on one or two points of that, if you like.
Well, we just recently had the Intergovernmental Commission in Baku, Russian-Azerbaijan Intergovernmental Commission on the 26th of April, and the broad range of issues was discussed about our future plans. So far, every year we had good results, we have growth of turnover, but of course with the current situation we need to see what else we can do, because for our farmers, Russian market is the only big market. And of course, for Russian producers, Azerbaijani market also is of importance. We buy more from Russia than we sell, so we have a negative turnover balance. But at the same time, our export to Russia grew last year. With the new situation, with these sanctions, of course, we need to see what will be the practical impact. And you can imagine that we now have two countries under sanctions to our neighbors, Iran and Russia. And it is a very difficult situation, because how we can successfully cooperate and trade if there are sanctions, if there are problems with money transfer, and many other problems. Therefore, we need to see what will be the coming period decisions. But our trade relations with Russia were pretty diversified. They covered agriculture, services, investments, not a big amount, but still, and many companies who work here and who work, and of course, Azerbaijani community in Russia is very big, and they also contribute to growth of turnover. So far, we didn't see any negative impact on sanctions on Russia, but we don't know how it will transform in timetable. What will be in 6 months or 1 year if sanctions remain? That's difficult to prognose.
Jean-Michel Brun.
Thank you, Mr. President, for having welcomed us so warmly. I have first to apologize. I am French. I'm so sorry. That's why my question won't be political, because I think that pen is often more efficient than weapons. So France and Azerbaijan are two very high cultural countries. Shusha and Paris are great cultural capitals. And 5 centuries before Diderot and Rousseau, the great poet and philosopher Nizami Ganjavi was a precursor of the philosophy of enlightenment. So my question is, do you plan to develop strong cultural relations between France and Azerbaijan?
Actually, we have strong cultural relations between two countries, and the history of our cooperation actually demonstrates that. In culture, in education, we really had a very good progress and several important events. And many times there have been cultural presentation, cultural days of Azerbaijan in different French cities. I can tell you that I don't remember exactly, but I think it's more than 10 sister cities between French cities and Azerbaijani cities. And it is not formal, it's really, there was a big public traffic. Also, looking at education and as part of culture, it was our initiative that led to the creation of French Lycée in Baku, in one of the most beautiful places of our city, just overlooking the Caspian Sea. And then subsequently, when we agreed with then President François Hollande to create a French-Azerbaijani university, and we did it within 1 year, and also it's already working, and with very good results. So we really had a very diversified cultural relations, and they're still there. They have not been subject of certain recent developments. Talking about overall political relations, I would say that they are normal. they are back to normal, I would say. I would add that it was not us who did something wrong, unfortunately, but we understand that there is an Armenian community, there is powerful groups. They influence not only the decision-making process, they influence the brains of people. And relations with France for us always was important because it's one of the leading countries of the world, and also was important in order to present our case, to demonstrate to French public opinion that Azerbaijan is not as Armenians present us. Though we know their connections in the leading media of France and publishing dirty articles about us, 95% of these articles have been written by Armenians or pro-Armenians. We understand it. And it has never been part of kind of a big deal. France, as a Minsk Group co-chair, always was acceptable for Azerbaijan. But unfortunately, during the liberation war, there have been unnecessary steps, including the decisions of French, both chambers of parliament to recognize so-called Nagorno-Karabakh. There's a saying that being more Catholic than a Roman Pope. Yeah? Even Armenia did not recognize Nagorno-Karabakh. So Senate and the House of Representatives, they made this decision very, very sad. And I know very well the persons who were voting for that. That was absolutely counterproductive. From practical point of view, it meant nothing. From point of view of support to Armenia, it didn't work. Point of view to stop us from liberating our territory didn't work either. Only created unnecessary, how to say, atmosphere, which now both governments try to clean, and I think successfully. I had a very good and long meeting with President Macron in December in Brussels, and then we communicated on the phone. So I think it is common understanding that we need to close that page and forget about it. And for you, there's no need to apologize. French people are our friends and will remain our friends.
Now that Dimitrios Triantafylou.
Thank you, Mr. President, for taking your time to answer to our questions. My name is Dimitrios Triantafylou. I'm a Greek academic working in Istanbul at Derryhouse University for over a decade. And in a way, I'm a bridge maker. And it's very interesting, I'm just thinking of what you've been saying today and what we talked about yesterday in Shusha, keeping a balance between memory and looking forward. And the process is tough, and there are many obstacles along the way, and it takes time. It takes time to bridge communities and countries and so on. But I would like to get back to one thing. My question has to do with Azerbaijan and the European Union. I know Amanda asked the question also, but given the Russian invasion of Ukraine, how do you see relations between Azerbaijan and the EU evolve and how they could improve? You already talked about some of it. There's an upgrading of the PCA right now in process. We see Charles Michel's activism when it comes to relations between Azerbaijan and Armenia. You've talked about, yes, getting the equal amount of, in terms of equity, grants and loans that Armenia gets and so on. But beyond that, because we talk about the new realities, you keep talking about new realities, and I know you look into a crystal ball, we don't know how they evolve, but the EU itself is evolving. It's starting to work on strategic autonomy, it's trying to work, it has a strategic compass. President Macron's re-election helps the process move along now. So how do you see, what would you like to see relations with the EU and Azerbaijan go?
Yes, these relations are very important, and I think our advantage is that we have a very clear and realistic agenda with respect to relations with EU. I know that there are aspirations from other members of Eastern Partnership Program to have a membership, but we must understand that it's a long process. Very, very long process. And in case with Azerbaijan, probably it is not a possible scenario. Therefore, we need to base our relations on pragmatism, on mutual benefits and mutual interests, and not to have over expectations, otherwise disappointment will be there. If you put a target and cannot reach, then you start to blame someone for that. The last whom you blame is yourself. You blame everybody, but not yourself. To avoid it, we need to put very realistic targets, what we want and what EU wants. More or less it is clear. EU wants stability on its neighborhood, on its borders. From us, of course, they get, but they want to get more energy resources. That was even before Russian-Ukrainian war, and that was a strategic part of our cooperation. They're very interested in our transportation infrastructure and how can it be connected with a broad European transportation network. And that is why, for instance, when the former president of European Council, Mr. Donald Tusk, was in Baku in 2019, he went to our trade seaport to see the facilities. And when Charles Michel was president of European Council in Baku last year, he made a regional visit to Shamachi, and there he was presented with Baku trade seaport capability and opportunity. What it means? It means that a big interest in our transportation. And of course, EU wants security and stability and wanted resolution of Nagorno-Karabakh. Yes, they wanted a peaceful resolution, but it didn't happen. But now they accept fully the new realities, and that's why we have these meetings in Brussels now, regular meetings. What we want? We want, first of all, establish closer relations. We don't want to put in front of ourselves, as I said, unrealistic targets like membership and not to spoil these relations. We want to have access to modern technologies, and we have them. Of course, we want to have broader access to European energy market, and this is fully in line with European energy strategy. We want a single standard approach to situation in the region, not only Armenia, Azerbaijan, but also Georgia, Armenia, Azerbaijan, to treat three countries of the Southern Caucasus from the same angle. And with respect to Armenia, Azerbaijan normalization, of course, this balanced financial and adequate financial package for both will be crucial. If this balance is not observed, there'll be a lot of disappointment, it is obvious. But as I said, we are moving on this direction. And to finalize the remaining part of our agreement with EU and to sign it. In 2018, we initialed partnership priorities document between EU and Azerbaijan, which had very important paragraph about territorial integrity, sovereignty, and availability of international borders of Azerbaijan. That was for the first time. Always before, EU was very reluctant to put such a firm and straightforward wording. Always they were referring to peaceful talks, Minsk group, etc. But partnership priority document was a very important signal, and it encouraged us. I can tell you after and I attended as a signing ceremony in Brussels. And after that, we really started seriously to believe that EU can be a fair, broker. And what happened after the war clearly demonstrates, because there was a kind of a vacuum, and Minsk group dysfunctional, and So that vacuum is now, to a certain degree, is filled by EU. And also, I can tell another factor. Close cooperation with EU, of course, will seriously contribute to modernization of Azerbaijan, including young generation, education potential. We were talking about Italian Azerbaijan University, French Azerbaijan University exists. And also, close ties with EU will strengthen the secular character of Azerbaijani society. This is, of course, an important part of our state policy. And also, this state policy is widely supported by Azerbaijan population. But secularism is one of the fundamental basis of our statehood, and close ties with EU, of course, will positively influence the future secular development of Azerbaijan.
Mr. President, Ambassador Pashayev started our conference about the Lachin Conference Initiative. With your permission, our last question, I wanted to give the floor to the owner of this initiative, to Dr. Ilan Shifu. Ilan.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Thank you. I have to congratulate you for the speed and the quality of the reconstruction of the roads, airports in Fizuli, what we've already seen, and some other infrastructure. It is, my original question went on the Zangezur corridor, on the roads and railroads, and you've already covered that at a large respect. The thing where I would like to go is if you already, it is sure you have a strategy of development, not only of Nagorno-Karabakh, but integrated Azerbaijan, and if there's possible to have pieces of this strategy that we could know about and where our involvement could be welcomed. At the same time, I was thinking, coming back to Zangezur, you have in the trilateral agreement a role for the Russian troops there. How do you see that evolving if this integrated Turkey, Armenia, Azerbaijan interconnection can be made? Where do you see and how do you see that being integrated, I mean the presence of the Russian troops there? Thank you.
Yeah, with respect to the presence of Russian peacekeepers, it is a part of the trilateral declaration which was signed at night of the 10th November. And in that declaration, there is a precise number of the military personnel and precise number of military armored vehicles. So everything is based on that. And also there is a timetable for their peacekeeping operations, 5 years. And if any side of that agreement decides that 5 years is enough, then 6 months prior to the end of duration, that is publicly announced. So this is, I think, important factor to understand the future configuration. And also there is a Turkish-Russian monitoring center, as I said, which monitors the situation. And basically in the area which is now under control of Russian peacekeepers, situation for 1.5 years is stable. There have been some tensions on the border between Azerbaijan and Armenia in the past. Now it's also stable, but in the Karabakh area, if there have been some, how to say, tensions, but that was very sporadic. In general, Russian peacekeepers provide very important transportation facilities for us because we use that territory which is under their control to bring cargoes to Kelbecer, because otherwise the road through the Omer mountains is very difficult. We are building 12-kilometer tunnel, but it is not ready. Therefore, they provide also transportation through Lachin corridor when we need. And we also provide transportation of their cargoes to their peacekeepers through Azerbaijani railroad. It goes from Moscow directly to Barda, and then it's close to Khankendi. Otherwise, they have to fly by planes and then go many hours through Lachin corridor. So there is a good level of interaction between Russian peacekeepers and Azerbaijani military servicemen. And I think that, and what we are doing now, for instance, with respect to the corridors, is absolutely free from any kind of other involvement. So with respect to the transportation corridors, of course, we would like them to take place sooner than later. And Armenia should finally decide how they want to see. I already talked about that, just to add that we really are committed to have this trespassing through Zangezur, and Armenia be part of that. We even may think about some ideas about electric lines. By the way, in the memorandum of understanding which we signed with Iran, we have it. We don't have only highway and railroad, we also have electric cable, because that's also one of the routes to export electric energy. And in general, on the integration of future development of Azerbaijan, in Azerbaijan we work with respect to regional development based on the 5-year plan. This is called a Regional Development Program. The first was adopted by me several months after I first became president in February 2004. And every 5 years we review and put another 5-year target. So this program is published, it's public, and mainly is based on the requests from the regions, what people want to see. And a lot has been done. Now what we are doing, we are working on a deep integration of Karabakh and Zangezur to other parts of Azerbaijan. That's why these railroads, airports, highways, electric lines, it's almost done. The most important now, which still needs more time, is water distribution, because we've been deprived from our rivers for 30 years. Armenians were closing the Terter River when we needed water in spring and summer, and creating drought on 100,000 hectares. And then in winter they opened, and it was a flood. So that was an ecological terror. And by the way, Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe several years ago adopted a special report which was voted for, condemning Armenia for this ecological terror. But a lot of water resources are there in Karabakh, which we will divert also to other parts of Azerbaijan. And that will allow us not only to irrigate Karabakh as a whole, which of course will be done, but also to bring that water to other parts of Azerbaijan where water supply is problematic. And that will be a very, rapid and very efficient integration. Also what is in our mind now, we have a new system of management there. I have a special representative for Karabakh. I have a special representative for Shusha. You met them. And also there will be special representatives in other parts. Why they are not appointed yet? Because in other parts we don't have yet very active, settlement process. But that also will be done. And we are in a way testing this new model of management. Because existing system of regional administrations, it was created after the collapse of the Soviet Union, and I think it was not very thoroughly thought through. Therefore, there are a lot of questions. And as you probably know, many, I think maybe more than 10 of regional leaders of the regions have been arrested for bribery, for mismanagement, and for other wrongdoings. And publicly, it was filmed, the procedure of these bribes. So it's unfortunately area which is contaminated by corruption. So the new system which we are testing in Karabakh, it will be different, and I think that there will be opportunities then, after this final test is over, to transform it to the rest part of Azerbaijan, thus improving the governmental management in the regions. Because decisions which we adopt in Baku, they're all aimed at improvement of living standards, infrastructure, economic development, but sometimes because they are not implemented in the region, some people do not see it. So, in other words, and also with this green agenda, the green energy zone of Karabakh, I already announced it, and that means that it will be done, because I never say something which I'm not sure that it will be done. So, but at the same time, this green agenda will extrapolate to all the rest of the country. Smart city, we never had it. So first will be in Agdam, and smart village in Zangilan region. We will then transfer it into other parts of Azerbaijan. So a lot of plans we have, really. It's a lot of things to do. We work 24 hours a day. Everybody is enthusiastic, the government, the people, former refugees. We will return first refugees very soon. Don't want to say when, but very soon to Zangilan. And other plans are in the pipeline. We have everything to do what we plan. Commitment, will, resources, mobilization, unity of our society, and stability. So, and we want to share it with the neighborhood. And as we discussed, and biggest part of our discussions was devoted to Armenia-Azerbaijan future cooperation. I think they need to analyze thoroughly what we are doing, to properly understand what is our agenda, and not to miss this chance, because this will be the last. So they need to jump into the train.
Mr. President, with this intervention, our list of questions comes to an end. And on behalf of our group, I'm honored and privileged to express our utmost appreciation and thanks to you. And you almost spent 3 hours with us, and you answered more than 20
Time passed very quickly.
And you answered 20 wide variety of questions. And once
thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for being with us, and wish you all the best. And as we discussed, we'll think about some intermediate events before annual Shusha Forum.
Mr. President, before we break off, I would like to say something that all of us are here from 23 countries, and from our behalf, we would like to pay compliments to the people who are involved in the reconstruction of Karabakh. They are the heroes, and I think we must over here give a big round of applause for them.
Thank you. Thank you very much.